Hello, everybody, and happy Aquarius full moon. This is coming to you belatedly on the day of the full moon, which is today, August 19th. And that's the timing of the full moon is 7:25 in the evening, universal time, so 1925. And the degree of the moon is 27 degrees and 15 minutes of Aquarius in opposition to the sun at 27:15 of Leo. So if you are my Anzac crowd, you will be experiencing this on the 20th of August. So I'll be a little bit in advance for you. For everybody else, this is happening on the 19th of August. It has been a peripatetic week for me, just an absolutely extraordinary stream of events that have happened. Uh, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Susan, and I am a consulting astrologer. I just happen to also embody a lot of the transits that are going on, and so will you if you were born in early 1966. Those of us born in early 1966 will have Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces, and those are squaring alongside this Aquarius full moon. And depending where that comes in your chart, there's going to be an awful lot of pushing and pulling. And for me, it's a ninth house Saturn squaring a 12th house, or being squared by rather, a 12th house Jupiter. And so really it's a lot of chaos, or let's say stopping and starting around traveling, equally around publishing. In my case, I'm trying to work on a book. And so some of those things have been stalled, at least temporarily, while I work on the royalties with the widow of the author of the book I've just translated. So anyway, all that to say, I'm right in the thick of it with you. I feel like in many ways I'm a guinea pig of these transits that we're going through. This moon is also in a square to my nodal axis. So watch this space. Who knows what's going to emerge from the weeks ahead. But what I'd like to say before we jump into the sort of what does this all mean is that just overall, we're in a time of immense change. We're in a time of, like, as if that's news to you, but we're in a time of really rapid change. And I want you to keep in mind that it was ever thus. This is the way that life goes. It's just that sometimes we have this kind of false sense that everything is more or less stable. And the more that you put your attention out into the world, and the more you are preoccupied, perhaps with other people's comings and goings or the political temperature of the time, the more you are emotionally invested in your dear leaders or your cult leaders or whomever it is that you're invested in and their comings and goings, and the more that you're invested in your beliefs. Now this is Aquarius energy, your ideologies and your beliefs and your firm convictions around things, the more you're going to be feeling like you're pushed and pulled in all kinds of directions. So come back to yourself and let go of the thoughts, and whatever is the thought, anything that you can recognize, anything that you can identify, and that you can notice coming from the self that you are, is not who you are. And so when you feel overwhelmed by too much of whatever it is, too much change, too much noise, too much chaos around you, then come back to yourself in the simplest way. Start to breathe, gently smile. My yoga teacher, Swami Veda, years ago, passed away more than 10 years ago already. He used to say, just relax your forehead. I can hear his voice every time I say that sentence, relax your forehead. And it's just such an incredibly peace-inducing thing to do because we overthink. This is another Aquarius thing, especially as this moon is in opposition to Mercury. So lots of thinking. Lots of information also being targeted at us. Even if we try and avoid it, we walk out in the street. If you're in an urban area, the information comes thick and fast in all kinds of different ways. And so just come back to yourself. If even in the midst of chaos, you close your eyes briefly or just look down if you can't close your eyes safely, and And just notice that you're alive, that you're breathing. And in this moment, the changes that you feel are overwhelming are just thoughts around those changes. They might be opinions around those changes. So, with that in mind, I also want to read a passage that I found really interestingly tying in with this energy. Actually, before we look at the chart, I'll share this passage with you because it's really lovely. It's Rudolf Steiner. As many of you will know, Rudolf Steiner was a great thinker and a very, very forward-thinking person. Unfortunately, we don't really have a solid natal chart for him. There's a lot of conflict around his natal chart. The only thing we can be sure of is that he's a Pisces. He may be a Pisces sun with what is it, a Scorpio rising and a Virgo moon, but that's not really 100% sure. There's so much dispute around his actual time of birth, but we know he's a Pisces anyway. So what he says here, I think is really interesting for these times. Of course, it's interesting for all times. I'm going to read it to you, and then you might like to take a screenshot of this and just remind yourself every now and then. We must eradicate from the soul all fear and terror of what comes towards man out of the future. We must acquire serenity in all feelings and sensations about the future. We must look forward with absolute equanimity to everything that may come. And we must think only that whatever comes is given to us by a world directive full of wisdom. It is part of what we must learn in this age, namely to live out of pure trust without any security in existence. Trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. Truly, nothing else will do if our courage is not to fail us. And let us seek the awakening from within ourselves every morning and every evening. Now, these notions of the future and looking forward to the future and our feelings about that, it's very Aquarian energy. It's very much about what is the future bringing and how can we move into a more spiritual realm, a more spiritual way of relating to the world. We are participating in something much bigger, much vaster than the mind can comprehend. It's always going to be just such an infinitesimal part. Our opinions, our immediate needs, and the stuff that we're grappling with right now is just such a tiny, tiny, tiny little smidgen of a thing compared to what is going on in the universe around us. NASA seems to have been able to delineate 420,000 galaxies. Now we are one tiny little blip in our own galaxy. Now, can you just try and get your head around that? That's very Aquarian, that energy of the cosmic realm around us. It boggles the mind. So the only thing left to do is to surrender to the mystery of all of this. That's the Piscean, where Aquarius falls into the Piscean realm. Just surrender to it all. And I like this last line, especially because there's a lot of talk around certain times and astrological energies that are going to wake us up, that are going to awaken us. We will awaken a certain collective consciousness because of astrology transits. I don't subscribe to this at all. And he's very, very clear here. It says, let us seek the awakening from within ourselves. This is the only place that can happen. We can't count on an awakening of a collective that will somehow make our world better. And often what people think of when they think of better is that everybody will think like me and want to do the things that I want to do, and everything will be fine then, which, if you think about it, is a kind of a form of fascism. So just be careful what you wish for. Right, I'm going to come back now to the chart, and we'll have a look at all of this in the astrological language at the moment. And yeah, so just keep all of these things in mind as I'm going through this delineation, and we will look at all 12 signs. I do really encourage you to watch the introduction always. I know many people, if you're not that kind of person, you're probably not going to hear this message anyway, but many people will jump to their own sign, which of course is fine. It's just that it's missing out our collective experience, or what is going on in the context of this. And what I see in that dynamic is actually a little bit of this Leo and Aquarius as well. The Leo is what's in it for me, and the Aquarius is what do we have to do with this? How do we manage this collectively? And so Leo, it's not to say that Leo is somehow selfish or bad energy. It's just self-identified. It's self-focused, and the awareness coming from the self is very important. We have to have that consciousness or that self-awareness. Here we've just had on Sunday the 18th, the Cazimi, as Mercury and the Sun met while Mercury is retrograde. That's considered the interior conjunction of Mercury. And this Cazimi has an orb of 17 arc minutes of a degree. So that's the technical definition of a Mercury Cazimi. But it is under the beams of the sun for quite some time. So for many degrees before and after, I think up to 7 degrees, we can count that Mercury is under the beams of the sun. And what that means is it's actually really highly influenced by the energy of the sun itself. And therefore, Mercury is not necessarily able to see things with specific clarity, but rather it can tend to generalize things. Nonetheless, what is extremely important here is that Mercury is also in opposition to that moon. And so there's the opposition of the self and what I'm thinking and what I'm experiencing and what I'm considering about this time, and the notion of the other, the societal quest. Now, the moon always represents the people or the collective sort of soul, if you like, the collective body in a mundane chart. And we can also see that the moon represents our mind and body in our individual charts. And so there is something here to be reflected upon in terms of the dynamic between what the people or what the collective might want, or what we might want in our emotional nature, and what the consciousness in terms of our goals, ambitions, our drives in the form of Leo and the sun in Leo, which is its own sign, very strong. And what that wants, there's tension there in the opposition between the sun and the moon. But also, if we take the sun as leaders in general, because Leo also is the leader, the king in traditional astrology, the ruler of a country or the ruler of a region or the ruler of a company, of a government, etc. Those leaders are also in opposition to the people, and this is always a significance between the between the Leo and the Aquarius energy. So that is part of the symbolism, this kind of who gets to decide, who decides what. And Aquarius is always something to do with freedom, the notion of freedom. And one of the things that I learned very powerfully through Buddhism and especially through Thich Nhat Hanh was that we have to be aware of our thoughts as capturing us or as trapping us. When we want freedom, the paradox is with Aquarius energy, often there can be such a strong ideological quality that we're not even aware that our own thinking is the source of our own pain. On Instagram, I posted a short quote from Thai a couple of days ago about this. I'm not sure if it's still up there. It's a story that I posted. I might just repost it so you can see it again. Basically, the idea is that we are free when we're free of attachments to our thoughts and to our opinions and to the things that we need to take shape or form outside of us as a way of making ourselves happy. And that's actually one of the greatest freedoms that we could ever have. And so while people are often talking about revolution and freedom in terms of the Aquarian energy, which it can be, we are not free until we can disidentify with all of these things that we are so attached to in our thinking. If you're leaders, or if you're, I don't know, your religious leader or your political leader or whatever is so important to you that you can't withstand any opinion that might be different, or any kind of criticism, constructive or otherwise, of your beliefs or the leaders or whatever the people you follow, then you really do need to take a step back and wonder, have I absolutely immersed myself in this ideology? Because Aquarius is also the energy of cults and cultish thinking. Very important in these days to stay aware of the red flags around cultish thinking, because we are being programmed, through media and through supranational messaging to think a particular way. And it's so clever and so subtle that we're not aware that it's happening. So this is an opportunity even now to reflect on those things. What's very interesting here is that we don't only have the opposition between the sun and the moon, but also including that Mercury very tightly focused in on that opposition. But we also have what's called a T square, because we have two squares from Uranus to the moon, and from the moon to Uranus, and from the sun to Uranus. And so the opposition is one source of tension, and then the tension that is created within the opposition is this T square. And that energy of Uranus at this particular moment is also, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, around the new moon, very tightly configured to, or actually also in mid-July, very tightly configured to Algol. It lingers very, very strongly throughout August, but then it tapers off. But even really up until early November, Uranus is very close to Algol in the sky. You've heard other people talk about this. I'm not going to go into very great detail. I don't usually refer to the fixed stars unless there's something really outstanding. This is certainly one of our era's moments of fixed stars really dominating. But I also want to point out that as the sun moves forward into the 0-degree point of Virgo, it's moving over the fixed star of Regulus. So Regulus was, for most of my lifetime, at the very last degree of Leo. And it's just recently moved, recently meaning a few years ago, moved into the 1st degree of Virgo. Now, to have a conjunction, it needs to be within about a degree of Regulus. So we can't give it a big orb. Depending, I've forgotten the exact degree, but it's very tight. With most fixed stars, we can't give them bigger orbs than that. So we're looking at kind of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the sun will be in orb of conjunction of Regulus. And that's very interesting because that continues this theme of leaders and something very significant happening. So it's not just the fact that the sun is representing leaders, but also the fact that there's something significant at this moment about rulership and leadership. So watch this space. And also on Friday, we also have the squaring of Mars and Venus, which continues through this full moon. Mars is squaring Venus. It has already been in conjunction with Jupiter, and it is close to perfecting the square to Venus, which it does on Tuesday, so the day after the full moon, and then it moves into a conjunction with the United States Mars. Now, I'm going to do a separate video on all of those aspects of political stuff because I know some of you don't like it. And I will post that separately because I find it very, very interesting, but I probably won't be able to do that until sort of the 20th or something, till tomorrow, Tuesday, Mars's day. There you go. So we are, oh, by the way, yeah, this full moon is happening on the moon day. It's a Monday moon day, and that's also often considered to be quite an enriched blessing around the moon, around the lunation. It adds to the lunar emphasis at this time. I'll break it down in a moment, but just to say that this week is an ongoing, almost a prolongation of this opposition between the sun and the moon in so many ways. So the sun is going to move across Regulus. Mars is going to then conjoin the United States Mars. And at the time that it squares Venus in conjunction to the United States Mars, it's tightly squaring Venus, and Venus herself is on the US Neptune, which for me, using whole sign houses, is in the 10th house of the United States chart. So we're looking at something throughout this week, especially perhaps peaking Friday, Saturday, where whatever appears to be happening is not what's happening. And this can be some kind of issue around war, because of course we're talking about the US Mars in the 7th house, and that Mars return for 2 years. So this is a Mars return week, let's say, for the US at the time of this Aquarius square moon, Aquarius full moon. Let's see if I have that chart. I have Kamala there, so we'll look at her another time. Of course, this is affecting Kamala Harris quite strongly. It's affecting Justin Trudeau quite strongly. It's affecting Iran quite strongly. This is affecting Donald Trump. There's so many aspects of these particular days that are really strongly challenging many of the bigger stories of our day, which is, of course, to be expected. So let's just quickly look here. We've got the U.S. moon, which is in 5 degrees. Sorry, let's swap this around. So now the moon is on the outside. The full moon is the chart on the outside ring. The U.S. chart is the inside ring. The US moon is within 5 degrees, or the transiting moon has just crossed within 5 minutes, 5 arc minutes of a degree, and being opposed by the sun there at 27 degrees. And this is quite significant because, of course, we've got this square that I just mentioned, this T-square from Uranus. So there is going to be some big surprise shakeup in the US. Sixth house is going to have something to do with issues around labor or issues around contracts and negotiations with within the economy or outside the economy, meaning other trade. This is another meaning of the Uranus and Mars in the 7th house of the United States. These are trade relationships. We also see that the Uranus squaring the sun up in the 9th house, squaring Mercury, which is ruling that Mars in retrograde, is going to provoke some kind of issue around law and order or legislation or issues to do with the judiciary. Now, look for God help us. There's so much to talk about. So Donald Trump, I'm just going to flag this up here so you can follow. Just watch. I'm not going to go through it until tomorrow. But Donald Trump apparently is going to be charged with whatever lawfare, and I'm saying that, let's be fair, people. You have to see what's going on here. And I'm not a Trump person. I don't care about your Democrats, Republicans. I don't care about any of it. You just have to open your eyes to see what is going on. The New York State government or legislature is, I guess, prosecutor's office is trying to charge Trump. The idea is that he would be charged on the 18th of September. Now, if you are a good student of astrology, you recognize that date as the eclipse date, the Pisces full moon on the 18th of September will be the day, apparently, that Donald Trump is either going to be charged or potentially even taken to Rikers. So that would certainly be one reason why he's not going to be involved in the elections. I think that's one of the things. But I also think, and this is again, this is not a political statement, this is an astrological statement, that I do not think that Kamala Harris is going to get the full support that she needs to go through this bid, although she may actually be in the running and she may even win. I do not think she will very soon, potentially this week, sooner or later, she will be thrown under a bus. And this is because all of this energy, the Venus, and equally the aspects to her chart, which again I will talk about tomorrow in a separate video, they're not in strong dignity and they're not perfecting. They're not getting to the place where they actually accomplish their goal before they back off. There's a number of reasons why that is significant, and I'll explain that in the charts tomorrow. So these are why I say these things. It's astrological. It's not based on my opinion. I'm obviously watching to see what's going on in the world, to see how that's affecting our story. When we look at the chart between the Iran and the US, for example, we can see that the antagonism is baked into the chart, and that's from the earliest days, basically, that Iran is formulated out of the US overthrowing the Shah of Iran, and Iran, by response, declaring a republic an Islamic Republic. And so we can see that built into the chart. We'll look at these things so that you can see that I'm not just talking in terms of what I would like to see or what I think should happen. I'm talking based on what the astrology is showing and how does that get supported or otherwise, based on the news or the information that we can find out about these things. When I say news, I'm not talking about mainstream media because those are your propaganda arms. And so if you are still following mainstream media, um, you need to either, find a better source, or you need to recognize that you are at least getting the version of the story that your government wants you to hear and not the truth. Now, here we have an opposition also between Saturn and Venus at the time of this full moon. So again, we look at these stories here. We have an opposition between the sun and the moon, opposition between Mercury and the moon, a conjunction with the sun and Mercury, a T-square, again, with Uranus, which is sudden change, sudden potential unexpected events around leaders. Now, Uranus is ruled by this Venus. And Venus is not in strong dignity, and she's in opposition to Saturn. Now she is in both a square to Mars as well as so it's these squares have been perfected between Venus and Jupiter, and will perfect between Mars and Venus throughout the week. So we're seeing this evolve. We're seeing these squares evolving. It's happening over several days. The perfection is something that we see. The perfection is something that we see on Tuesday, and then again to the end of the week, and again moving forward as Mercury then will move direct again at the end of the month. We're going to see more of these same aspects come back in a repeated plan. Now, the same time that we have this Aquarius full moon, the same time we have this opposition between Venus and Saturn, Venus not in strong dignity, Saturn very strong at the moment, retrograding and also being received by Jupiter. So Jupiter itself is ruled by a retrograde Mercury ruled by the sun. So Jupiter is in an unusual sort of position of actually being dominated by Saturn, although they're pretty balanced at this time, where Saturn is actually the stronger of the two, but more balanced out because of this unusual configuration between Mercury, Sun. All of this to say that the tension and the confusion and the pushing and pulling is going to be the theme for the whole of this week. Go back to what I said at the very beginning around this sense of what is going on, and that can include in your own life, what is going on. And when you start to understand that it's just this constant shape shifting and change that is requiring adjustment, break it down into little pieces, break it down into a way of looking at your life insofar as you might even be concerned with what's going on in the world around. Of course, we are always indirectly, but some of us more so than others. So when you see that tension, let's say between the Mars and Jupiter, Mars in a square with Saturn and Jupiter in a square with Saturn, the perfection of the square between Jupiter and Saturn today, just a little bit after this full moon, it's speaking of a moment in time of massive transformation. And this is calling in something very new. That Uranian energy is calling in something extremely new. Even alone, that tension between Uranus and the moon, Uranus and the sun. But then you add in the Mercury and you add in the tension there with Mars, the squares to Venus, the square to Saturn. There's a lot of energy here that is not going to be fulfilled. And if we take Venus as referring to the female or the feminine, she's not strong enough. She's overwhelmed by this Saturn. Today, we have to acknowledge, is the day, I think, that begins the Democratic Convention. So I'm here in Europe. It's almost noon time, my time. So that will be getting underway in a few hours. Probably by the time this video gets uploaded, it will have started the day. I have no idea what's going to go on, but I don't think it's going to be what people have expected. And again, we'll look at that much more closely tomorrow. But Yeah, so this is one of the things that's challenged here for Kamala Harris at this point is something that a lot of her own supporters are taking issue with. A lot of people are taking issue with her latest. I think it was maybe a few days ago, she talked about wanting to establish price controls. Very Aquarian idea, by the way, very Aquarius to want to have control over how people exchange things, how people think, how people do things. Um, that is the other side of Aquarius. It's not all about the hippies sort of love and light and peace and all that stuff. It's also about social control, especially when you've got Pluto there. And and how the society is being shaped and controlled. Now, I lived in Prague in 1990, so early days, just after Prague, the Velvet Revolution, it was called. I was teaching English there as a volunteer. Well, we were a paid volunteer, but we were paid the going rate. In those days, everybody, whether you were a surgeon or a janitor or a street sweeper, you would be paid 3,000 Czech crowns a month, which was roughly the equivalent of 100 US dollars in those days. And so that's what I was paid because I was teaching English and everybody got their 3,000 crowns. Now, the prices were also controlled. So you could buy things like, I don't know, a pair of leather gloves for about 10 crowns. So everything was controlled. And it sounds all right up until the point where you realize that nothing is actually real. You don't get anything that you really want. And then everything that is actually of any value gets siphoned off to the black market where people start to sell in terms of more liberal trade. Now, I mentioned this because it's a dire situation to be in a place where you cannot control either your wages or prices. And that is, again, as I mentioned, this Aquarian idea, very Aquarian idea, this more communist or socialist idea. It sounds really good on paper. That's also very Aquarius. It sounds really good on paper. But when you start to apply it in reality, well, here comes Uranus and it says, are you sure about that? And so this is the pressure she's under from her own party. Again, this is not my opinion. I'm following the news and I'm applying the astrology of the moment as to how it might affect her. And this could be the moment where we see that she's now increasingly being thrown under the bus. And we have already seen that from certain people in the news. Michigan governor threw her under a bus in a conversation that she had on Meet the Press or something like that. I'm just seeing clips, just catching up with the news after having been kind of nonstop moving around for 5 days. And so again, I say these things but not because of the person she is. I'm talking about the situation she's in. It's not a tenuous, it is a tenuous situation. It's not a very long it's not a strong supportive energy or long-standing energy at the moment. It's very volatile. So we'll look at that more in detail tomorrow when I go into the political stuff. Let's see, what else needs to be said? Yeah, I think the other aspect of this, in just a really general sense, is to recognize this quality of idealism and our potential for disappointment. Now we have the moon that is moving into Pisces just after this lunation and moving therefore into a semi-sextile with Neptune. So the moon is squaring Uranus. Uranus and Neptune are kind of in a sextile. Uranus and Pluto are kind of in a trine. That will perfect in a year, the next couple of years. But that Neptune and the moon will be moving into this interesting semi-sextile. Now that's an uncomfortable position. Neptune is in conjunct the sun when it is on Regulus. And it's going to be semi-sextiling the moon, but we're talking like minutes after, like an hour maybe after the full moon. And the semi-sextile is kind of like when you're in an elevator, but there's too many people, and there's somebody behind you. It's feels a little bit awkward, feels a little bit weird, not comfortable. Or when you're driving and this is kind of blind spot, and you know that energy is there, but you're not quite sure how to navigate that energy. And so this is part of the mystery of this chart. How do we navigate this energy, that Neptune, when it causes confusion and difficulty, can also cause a certain amount of disappointment and disillusionment. And this is on the part of, if we take that as the meaning of the collective, the moon meaning the collective or the people. In this case, the United States, there's some disillusionment, there's some kind of disappointment, or at the very, the basics, the standard operation is that there is some kind of a sense of the wool being pulled over your eyes. Now, keep that in mind, as I did mention, that Venus will be conjoining, as she's squaring Mars. Venus is conjoining the Neptune in the US chart on Friday. That's quite a big deal. We'll talk again more about that tomorrow. But it is part of this week, the whole of this week. And as we go into the next lunar cycle of the waning moon for the next 2 weeks, do watch out for anything that seems to be that is news that seems to be a wee bit fishy. A good Pisces word, or a little bit hard to grapple with. I implore you, on behalf of the Aquarius moon, to start to listen to your so-called enemy. Listen to opposing opinions. Listen to the ideas that people have that might challenge yours. Because if your ideas cannot be challenged, if you start to feel vulnerable and you take it personally when somebody has a different opinion, different point of view, you're in a very fragile position. You set yourself up for violence, and you have to recognize that it is purely fear-based, that you won't allow your ideas or your opinions or your favorite dear leader to be questioned. It's important for you to build this resilience. This is also this energy of our times requires resilience. Saturn is helping with that. Saturn squaring Jupiter, interestingly enough, will help us with that as well, because what we're doing is we're challenging our sense of, okay, this is going to work. And then the Saturn comes along and says, no, forget it. It's never going to work. And there will be this kind of expansion, contraction. Believe me, it's in my birth chart. So I can tell you it's the way life goes for me. So there's going to be this expansion, contraction, this positivity. And that is very quickly followed by a heavy dose of realism that actually can keep you grounded. Surprisingly enough, when we're talking about a Jupiter in an air sign and Saturn in a water sign. So the net result is being grounded. To be fair, as one last comment, I want to just remind us we are on shaky ground with Uranus moving towards the end of Taurus. This is a very unstable time, but you don't have to feel unstable as things are unstable around you. You can be the eye in the storm, and you can come back to yourself, breathe deeply, know that you are alive, feel your feet, feel the base of your body, feel your breathing, feel how the body is changing shape as you're breathing. Relax your forehead and smile, as Ty would say, smile, breathe and smile. And know that all is well. There's something bigger than us at play here. So don't go getting hysterical about all the details of it. Let's have a look sign by sign. I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to move backwards, I think, just to keep the moon in Aquarius. So this is going to get a little bit weird. But let's see where we can move from here. Oh, let's see. I'm going to have to move backwards, full stop, folks. So we're going to start with Pisces and then move backwards. And then we'll get to Aries at the end. There you go. Is that going to be possible? Let's see. I'll just try to do this in such a way that I don't make myself go nuts, because my brain power is limited these days. Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to do it that way. Otherwise, we lose our lovely little moon. So let's start with Pisces and we'll move in reverse. And I'll just have to keep reminding myself that we're doing that. So for Pisces, sun, moon, and ascendant, especially if it's your ascendant, this is going to be quite noticeable. If it's your sun, this is very much linked to yourself in terms of your vision for your life and your career, perhaps as well, your sense of your purpose here. And then the moon, which is your inner experience of life, your mind and heart, and potentially also issues around your home. So Pisces, sun, moon, and rising. Of course, you Pisces are part of this configuration in by default because you've got Saturn in your first house. You also have Neptune in the first house, and Saturn is squaring Jupiter from the first house, or rather being squared by Jupiter from the fourth house to the first. You also have Mars in the fourth house. And so that can lead to a certain amount of instability that can be emotional because the moon is, the full moon here is in your 12th house. So there can be quite a lot going on in terms of your interior experience or your sense of what is real for you, what's something solid and reliable. The Mars going through the fourth can shake things up a bit around home and or around your emotional, psychological security. Um, and because that's going to be coming up to square to Venus in the house of relationship, or it has squared and it continues the square to Venus in the house of relationship, it might be that you have something involving a relationship that is actually factoring into this situation. So it might be because of a relationship, but something about the relationship is not entirely solid, or there's something that's not entirely as you would want it to be, simply because that Venus is not in a super strong dignity. She is in your house of relationship, and so that's always lovely, always really, really nice. Jupiter and Mars, though, can cause some excess emotion or just an enormous amount that needs to be done around the home and or around your internal emotional psychological state, what you feel you need for security. Jupiter rules you, Pisces rules your ascendant, rules the sun and moon. And so there is a really strong pull here in terms of that square to Saturn. So this is also perhaps something that requires a lot of, flexibility. That's your middle name, Pisces, but something that will bring a lot of temporary coming and going around that sense of stability or sense of self that Saturn is trying to build for you over this time. Now, with that moon in the 12th house, this could also be connected to something to do with faraway lands or people who are far away. The sun is in the 6th house of your everyday work, and this can also be around health and health issues. Mercury has just met with the sun and is retrograding away from it in your 6th house, so it will be there for another 2 weeks or more. And you also, that Mercury is also ruling your 4th house, where we see the Jupiter-Mars having just conjoined, as well as ruling your 7th house where the Venus is at this moment. So your relationships, your home life is all kind of up for question. Things need to be renegotiated. That's not something necessarily dramatic. It just might require short-term adjustment. So don't get too worried about this period of instability. Pisces, you're probably better equipped than most to deal with this. But definitely not a great time to make long-term reliable plans. Just maybe hang on if you can until September. At the very end of August, we have Mercury stationing direct. It's on the 28th or the 29th, depending where you are. When Mercury stations direct, it starts to get stronger and move faster. I shouldn't say stronger because it is strong anyway when it's retrograde, but it starts to get more helpful, let's say, as there is this energy of forward momentum in these areas of relationship and your 4th house of home and security and family and so on. We have a while off before Saturn actually stations direct, so that reverse motion continues for another couple of months, and it's good because you're reflecting now on things that need you to shape up a little bit more or step up a little bit more, to be more solidly you, to be more in a place of maturity or responsibility around yourself, around your boundaries as well. This might be what the Venus is about as well. The squaring to Jupiter that might be pulling too much of your attention outwards into relationships when really it's a time for you to try and stabilize yourself. Right. So Pisces, best of luck with all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. So Aquarius, of course, this is your full moon. We're getting almost the end of Aquarius. So this last couple of days, you will have already been basking in the moon going through your sign. And the moon in the first house is a reflection of yourself. It's revealing something about you, what you might need or want at this time. And the sun and Mercury in opposition are suggesting that there's somebody or some relationship, let's say, in your life that is reflecting back to you what is necessary, what's important for you at this time. This could be a business relationship. It could be an intimate relationship, because, of course, Mercury is there in the seventh, ruling the fifth house of love and your eighth house of marriage and shared resources. This could be very much about an intimate relationship. So there's something here that you have to learn from, that you can benefit from learning from, and that's part of also the work here of the Uranus in the fourth, which is perhaps over the last 6-7 years has been really shaking up your life foundations. Can be in the sense of your actual living circumstances, or it can be in terms of your inner circumstances, your psychological, spiritual grounding, emotional grounding, what makes you feel secure. It's been quite fragile these last few years for you. At the very least, it's been busy and exciting. That can be a very positive spin on that. But as a fixed sign, believe it or not, Aquarius, you actually do appreciate things being quite consistent. So yeah, the other aspect of this, of course, is that we have Saturn squaring Jupiter from your second house of money and resources and whatever supports you and your potential for your stuff, your income, your valuables, your worth or your self-worth as well, is squared by that Jupiter in the fifth, where Mars has given it an extra dose of maybe a desire to show up in a very different way. This Jupiter is very creative energy. It's in Gemini, so incredibly creative energy, very spontaneous. Mars gives it even more spontaneity, more ideas, because it's pulling in the third house of ideas and thinking into your fifth house, and that can also light up your 10th house of career. So you might be coming up with all kinds of ideas, and then Saturn says, wait a minute, what about the money? Or how are you going to earn a living from this? Or it might be about your children, and it's like the children are taking up all kinds of time and resources and energy in a way that seems wonderful and expansive. And then Saturn comes along and says, "I'm not sure we can do this," or that is going to just put some extra pressure on you in terms of taking responsibility for all of that. Which it's, let's face it, that's what parents have to do. So, sometimes we just have to suck it up. But it might be something that actually slows your roll in terms of whatever bigger creative enterprises you were engaging with. If it's about love, this is something that probably is meeting up with a temporary blip or some kind of a need for course correction. Venus is in the eighth, lovely place for Venus. She's not terribly comfortable, however, in that particular house, in neither in the eighth nor in Mercury, in the Mercury-ruled Virgo as well, because Mercury, who's ruling Venus at the moment, is retrograding. Under the beams of the sun, I think there might be some tension or confusion around either intimate relationships or around something to do with money, other people's money. There might be some kind of sense that you cannot rely on either a person in the relationship or the money that you had been hoping to rely on. Wait and see what happens when Venus goes in the ninth house. That's going to be a lot better by the end of August, and equally when Mercury is going to be moving back into its own sign in September. Mercury will be much stronger and give more clarity around whatever it is that's not very clear at this time. And you will also have Mars moving into the sixth house of work, also over 2 months, September, October, and again from December through April. And so you're going to have something there to keep you busy on whatever it is regarding your career or social status, which might involve marriage or other kinds of changes to your social status. So lots on your plate there, Aquarius, and I wish you all the best till I see you again. Capricorn, this is happening in your second house. So for your rising sign, Capricorn, especially, this is where we can see that resonating most obviously. And it also applies to the sun and the moon. Look in the description box below. As a good Capricorn, you probably already know about that description box, but surprisingly few people actually seem to know it's there. And I always describe what these interpretations are for sun, moon, and rising and what that represents. So the moon is in your second house, so there's an enormous amount of attention on your money, on your resources, and potentially also on your family, perhaps also on your self-worth. Of course, Pluto has been keeping you fixated in that area of your life for some time already, since last March 2023. Off and on over the last year. Your focus is this area of life, your earnings, your income, your valuables, your what you need to stay well, even potentially issues around your body, because the moon represents the body, and the second house also represents the body. And I say that especially because we have Jupiter, Mars in your sixth house of health and illness, issues around your mental or physical health that might require your attention. They might come to a head at this moment, particularly because we have Mercury retrograding in the eighth house of hidden issues that might even be psychological or things that are sort of crisis driven. Very strongly under the beams of the sun. So it may not be terribly clear, but you want to take good care of yourself. Mars going through the sixth house can denote a tendency towards inflammation. Jupiter there, Jupiter with Mars can be excess. Well, mind your excesses. And yeah, so you definitely could be in for a good checkup or at least a check-in with yourself on terms of your health. This could also be about your financial health and what you might want to do going forward, because Saturn is in your third house of exchanges of all kinds. It's also representing issues around your communications and how that is changing. Saturn is going back over the last few months' territory where you're reflecting on perhaps contracts or deals that you've done. Jupiter in the sixth and Saturn being ruled by Jupiter in the sixth from the third house. There's contracts and deals that are like, is this going to happen? Is this good for me? I'm not so sure. Venus is in opposition to that Saturn from the ninth, which is generally speaking a good place, a happy house for most planets. But Venus in opposition to Saturn says, wait a minute, it's not really clear what's going on here. And there's something that we need to get serious about. So it might be that that whatever champagne corks were popping even a couple of days ago are now starting to appear like, oh, wait, it's not quite that. And that's a good thing. So consider any delay to be in your favor, and see that that delay is going to produce a better result. We've got a Mercury retrograde, Saturn retrograde, and the energy of Uranus in the fifth house. Fifth house represents gambling, and it's taking risks, risk taking. You tend to be very conservative. Of course, that's because Taurus rules your fifth house, and Venus is ruling that Taurus from the ninth. So it's a really positive energy. She's trining you as well. So very positive energy from Venus, but she herself is not in great shape. So I would just be really cautious at the moment before investing or gambling or taking risks that where if there's even the slightest little twinge in your heart and mind, then just hold off. When Venus goes into your 10th house in her own sign in Libra at the end of August, so 20th, 29th of August, things will look better. Mercury will also be moving direct. That will help you enormously understand better what is going on. And what else? And I think this, yeah, so this is it for now. There's a lot of instability, a lot of stuff that is up for negotiation, let's say. Don't sign on the dotted line yet. Maybe wait until September. All right, Capricorn, make the most of it. I think it actually looks pretty interesting if you can just be a wee bit more patient with the unknown at this time. All right, good luck with all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, we're looking at this moon, this full moon in your third house. This is for Sagittarius rising sun and moon sign. And if we're looking here at the moon in the third house, there's an enormous amount of busyness in your life. Of course, this we've seen now for quite some time. For Sagittarius, we have a lot of change around this energy of career and work and your everyday that might affect your health with that Uranus energy moving through your sixth house all these years, 7 years now almost. And well, 6.5 at least, and it's in a square to the moon in the third house. Moon in the third house is in the house of its joy, and the sun in the ninth house is in the house of its joy. So we have this really lovely time for you every year whenever you have the Aquarius full moon. It's actually two planets that are generally speaking really, really happy. And this time there might be something you're reconsidering in terms of what you're doing in your life. What the heck am I doing in my life? Where am I going with all of this? Uranus has you terribly confused around your work, what to do, or at the very least, it makes you feel unsettled around what feels like your day-to-day tasks and how you should be working. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't like it, because actually, let's be fair, you're always up for a change, Sagittarius, so it might be working for you. But that Uranus energy is squaring the sun and the moon. And so whatever is going on in your everyday is going to be the sort of the joker here in the pack, where whatever you're feeling like you want to do, or the busyness and the goals and the things that you want to achieve, might come in for some surprises, especially around your whether it be your day-to-day job, or how you're dealing with contracts and contractual relationships, whether that's a work contract or a rental agreement, or even a purchase of something that you might have changed your mind. Third house is all those exchanges of all those kinds, and the sixth house is all of the agreements that we have with people around exchanges. And then here we have in the seventh house, the people that we're agreeing with or not. There may be some disagreement because we've got Mars there in the seventh. That's a bit uncomfortable, but it can be actually really dynamic. But your ruler, Jupiter, is in the seventh house. And so there's a lot of your attention. It's like saying if your ruler is in the seventh house, a lot of you goes to that seventh house energy. So putting a lot of attention on other people or on the quality of your relationships in general. And that is squaring Venus in the 10th house of your social status. So there's some tension between the desires that you have, or your wishes for whether it be your career or your day-to-day sort of participation out in the world, how you show up in the world. And there's some tension there based on all of what is going on, or maybe prior commitments that you have with other people through relationships that you have. It doesn't look necessarily bad. I have to say it's simply that there is an ongoing adjustment, that Venus that's in your 10th house is being slowed down by something to do with Saturn in the fourth house. Now, Saturn is ruled by your ruler because your fourth house is ruled by Jupiter as well as your first house of self. Fourth house is your house of home and your foundation, your security, let's say, your foundation psychologically, emotionally, it's family, it's your lineage. So there may be something there again that seems to be holding you back, or that seems to be potentially a frustration. You may, for example, have got yourself into a lease, and you're like, what have I done? I don't know why I don't want to live here. Or there's something going on at home with family, and you have to put a lot of attention on that. And it might be around children, or it might be around just your own needs. And you're somehow not able to take off. This Venus is not in her best shape to bring out that quality of what you'd like to see happen in your career. So you want to wait till the end of August, wait until Venus moves into your 11th house on the 28th, 29th, I think it is. Wait until Mercury stations direct, which is roughly the same time. And then you're going to start to see that things make more sense. Either you find the solution to the issue, or you realize, it wasn't so bad after all. It's all working out for the better. Now, at the same time, at the beginning of September, and we'll speak about this much more, Mars is going to go through Cancer in your 8th house. That can cause some tension in the areas of intimacy or money that's shared with others, feelings of trust and reliance on others, or issues around the family, because it is Cancer. So just know that this is something that requires a lot of your attention. Put your attention on it to resolve it. That affects your 12th house as well. And so for Sagittarius, your water houses are going to be really dynamic because you've got that Saturn along with Neptune, along with Mars in Cancer. Um, and there's going to be there is a need for a big adjustment here that comes from your emotional and psychological security that might be also about overcoming fears around your security or overcoming family patterns. I'll talk about that again so we can get more in detail when Mars goes into Cancer, or I'll see if I can get my act together and get it done well in good time before Mars goes into Cancer. Anyway, all of that to say, yes, things are unsettled, but at the moment, try to work on the level of that Sagittarian curiosity around adventure. And when you tap into the sense of, hey, let's just try this, or hey, what an adventure this could be, you're going to be flying and you'll love it. So good luck with that, Sagittarius. I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, this full moon is in your house of home. So this is going to pull a lot of your attention, and that's for sun, moon, and rising sign. A lot of your attention is going to where do I live? How does that feel? Do I feel secure? There's some big change here. There may be a lot of reconsidering or considering, and the big change can be something to do with your career. This might have been a move or a need for adjustment because of your work or your ambitions. Maybe there's something that you have had to change about your situation because of how you want to work. Either it's about moving to get towards work, so you get a better situation, or you're moving because your work is no longer available and you have to find work, or you're being told to move by work or by your partner. This could also be something that your marriage partner says, hey ho, you got to move because I have to move. So if you want to stay with me, you got to come along with me. Here we've got Jupiter and Mars, your ascendant ruler. So Mars is ruling Scorpio, and it's in the 8th house along with Jupiter. And that Jupiter is ruling your 5th house of your creativity. Children as well may be involved in this picture. It's ruling your house of money as well. Jupiter from the 8th ruling your house of money. So it does actually look like there's something that is coming through a partnership. Either your changes are necessary due to a partner or due to other demands that if you work for an institution or a company or some kind of situation, a government or something like that, that is giving you your income, then this is how that might be looking for you, that you have to do something that requires a new approach to that or a new way of seeing that in order to respond to whatever these new demands are. I don't see this as particularly negative, by the way. I think that's something that can be positive. I'm not so sure that you're going to see the dust settle, let's say, or the positive developments really flourishing until September. And things will start to become more, let's say, direct in the sense, both literally because Mercury will be direct, but also because then Venus will be in your 12th house where she is comfortable. And even if it is the 12th house, it's still her comfort zone. She's still happy. They're ruling also your 7th house of relationships. So if Uranus has been destabilizing, changing the people, the quality of the people, the type of relationships, the vision that you have for relationships, it's been changing a lot of that since 2018. And that is part of this configuration of the moon. So your relationship is playing a really major part in this story around the changes that are underway for you, Scorpio. Saturn in the 5th house maybe has you feeling a little bit set apart from your children or from the things that you love. It's putting a lot of attention, perhaps dotting the I's and crossing the T's around any new venture that you might want to undergo, perhaps something that has you deciding to work in a different way. This is a house of risk-taking. It's in a trine to your 1st house of self and a trine to your 9th house of your sense of what is possible. And your ruler will go in, Mars will go into the 9th house in the beginning of September, and off and on. It's going to be there for like 5.5 months or more, off and on until April next year. Going between your house of career and the ninth house of your sense of perspective or hope, sort of divination is another word for that house. It's also your sense of your purpose. These are the Dharma houses, first, fifth, and ninth house. So Saturn is trying to get you more serious on something to do with that. So that works in your favor. Again, any delays or anything that is being held back in this way, especially through that square between Jupiter and Saturn, ultimately will bring you results. It's not going to be easy right now. I think you're going to find it difficult to establish anything clear or lasting these days. This week will be a bit of a catch as catch can, and the more you take it as a going with the flow kind of vibe, the easier it will be for you. Now, you're a fixed sign, so that's not always easy for you. Fixed signs on the angles often struggle with change and with letting go, but it's part of what is required of you now. So best to try not to wrestle everything to the ground and find a solution right off the bat, but let things evolve and see how things pan out, as the sun will also, by the end of this week, move into your 11th house of your vision for your future and socializing and so on. So that can also cool things down a little bit and bring a little bit more of a sense of visionary nature to what's going on, as opposed to a feeling of really having to put your shoulder in and do the heavy lifting. Right. Well, there we are. So I hope that was helpful for you, Scorpio, and I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, this is happening in your fifth house. The full moon in Aquarius is in the fifth house of your creativity, your self-expression, your children. It's the house of risk-taking. It's very dynamic. It's about being inspired by new things and different things. Now, Saturn is in your sixth house, which is ruling that moon in the fifth. And so there might be something here that has to do with your work and how you might feel under obligation. Saturn works very well for Libra. It's exalted in Libra, so it's actually quite helpful for you. And Saturn in the sixth house, especially along with Neptune, can have you feeling like you're just always giving way too much. And this is part of the lesson of the moment. So be careful. Your ruler is in the 12th house, the house of self-undoing, where things are not terribly clear right now. The things that you're doing yourself, especially vis-a-vis relationships, and particularly strongly with relationship to martyring and victimization, or being subjected to things that you believe are coming from the outside, but actually are coming from your own choices. This is a really big lesson for you, and that will become more obvious when Venus moves into the first house and crosses over the first house through much of September, the first 3 weeks, I think, of September at least. You'll feel a lot more comfortable then. But nonetheless, that Saturn is a big lesson for you around whatever this creative expression is, whatever the risk-taking is. The outcome is not going to be what you thought it would be. And there's a lot of questioning around that Mercury, having just met the sun in your 11th house of your vision for the future, or the connections that you have with this sort of social acquaintances around you, the people that you share ideas with. It's not exactly going to pan out as you had hoped. And this is also where we find Jupiter and Mars up in the ninth house. Jupiter is very happy up in the ninth house. Most of these planets rather love being in the ninth house, but Jupiter is not in its strength, because it's actually in its detriment in the sign of Gemini. And so it's squaring Saturn with a Mercury retrograde ruling it under the beams of the sun that's ruling the Mercury retrograde. So quite a lot of tension around things that might be feeling like an aspiration or a hope or a vision, a sense of a prospect or a purpose. And the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day stuff, as well as the way that you are handling all of that, can be what holds it all back. So slow down and really introspect. Look at all of this as a way of understanding how these things might pan out in a way that could shock or surprise you. You've got Uranus in the eighth house of shocks and surprises and crises and experiences from the unconscious process, which is ruled by that Venus in the 12th house of the unconscious as well, and what we don't see, what's behind our eyes. So yeah, it's an interesting time for you to become very self-aware. And the more that you do, the more you recognize you might need to make changes based on what is good for yourself, but also by extension then everybody else, rather than focusing on the other, focus on yourself, focus on what needs to be done and what responsibility needs to be taken. Saturn in the sixth house is very much about what responsibility you have. The moon is ruling your 10th house of career and reputation from this fifth house of risk-taking and ruled by that Saturn in the sixth. So whatever this new burden or responsibility or restriction might be, take it seriously and take it as a teaching. Take it as, of course, Saturn is the great teacher, Jupiter, the other great teacher, Guru, great teacher, and trying to show us something, especially in this case, of what it is that we're not, what is not really in our best interest. So Libra, lots to grow through there. And I think also very constructive way of understanding whatever feels restrictive or like an obstacle. It's not a no, it's a way it's just not like this. Don't do it this way, maybe, or don't do it with these people, or don't do it in this, with this frame of mind. Right. So good luck with all of that. And I will see you, Libra, in the next video. And we'll also be looking soon, I guess, in the next couple of weeks, we will be looking at your very last eclipse in the sign of Libra, around 10, 11 degrees of Libra. And so that's going to be a very exciting time for you in the couple of months ahead. So a lot of what you're preparing for here will also help you make these big shifts and change yourself in early October, 2nd of October, when you come up on that eclipse. I'll see you in the next video. And so Virgo, we have, of course, a really interesting sixth house moon for you. So lots of focus here on your everyday, on your maybe your work situation, especially so because you've got Jupiter and now very ambitious Mars up there in the 10th house. You've got Saturn in your house of partnerships, opposing Venus in your house of self. The moon and sun are in opposition in the sixth house of your work or your resisting work, let's say, or where you show up in a way that might also require some adjustment, because we've got this Mercury retrograding into the 12th house. So there's something that you need to reconsider around what can be explained as hidden motives or your self-undoing. When I say self-undoing, you can think of it as self-sabotage almost, or the things that you might be seeing or doing in a way that are not, hang on just a minute. Just need more quiet there. So in a way that might not be in your own best interests. Now, that's actually very helpful as well for imagining things. Mercury, Sun in the 12th house can be really creative, imagination, especially because it's in a square to Uranus in your house of the visionary sort of future purpose, your sense of what drives me, what do I believe in, what do I have faith in. But the moon in the sixth house can have you feeling that you're just doing a lot of schlepping around, lots of work, lots of heavy lifting. Now, as a Virgo rising, that's kind of just par for the course. That's often your go-to, but it doesn't have to be. Keep that in mind. Saturn in the seventh puts better boundaries on your relationship situation. It also means that you feel you're building towards something durable and lasting. Now it's in opposition to Venus. And in the first house, seventh house axis, that can actually feel like whatever is going on with the person you're relating to feels like an obstacle to yourself. Or it feels like it's far away, or it feels like it's requiring a lot of your compromise or a lot of your work. And that should always bounce back to you as a way of understanding, what do I need to change in my no, no as a full sentence, in my sense of what I need out of a relationship, and also in the sense of who I need to be in relationship with. Um, and that's not always a no, forever. It's a look, this doesn't work for me. That's your sentence, Virgo. This does not work for me. And so I've often said that with the Pisces seventh house, Virgos, especially the Virgo risings, tend to pick up strays, and they're all like, oh, let me take care of you, let me fix you, let me heal you. And so you have to be careful of that need to save somebody from themselves or from whatever perceived thing, and at your own expense. So this is where you can really examine that. Your ruler is in the 12th house, retrograding. So you're reconsidering something there. Now, this might have something to do with international issues as well, because Uranus is in the ninth squaring this Mercury Sun conjunction in the 12th, which has a lot to do with people in faraway lands or foreigners of all kinds working in contexts that are foreign, or working with people in uh, in a context where your clients or your colleagues are far away. And of course, Mercury being your ruler, it's very important what it's doing at any given time. And so when Mercury stations at the end of August, I think you'll also find that whatever this tension or this challenge to your aims and your desires, it will stabilize and it will become more clear. You will have another square in the 24th of December between the Saturn and Jupiter from your 10th house of social status and career to your 7th house of relationships. So this can be about business partners as well as intimate relationships. So this question is going to be reframed with a slightly different energy, because at that point, then Saturn will be direct and Jupiter will be retrograde. So there's going to be some resolution around Christmas time to whatever the tension is now, although it's not fully resolved until we get into the new year, well into 2025. Right, I think that's it for our dear Virgos. So good luck with all that. I'll see you in the next video. So Leo, this is the moon in opposition to you, to yourself. So you have the sun in your house of self. So it's a very nice time. There's often a feeling of abundance and expansion when the sun goes through the first house, even physical vitality. You have Mercury there as well. So there's a lot of reflection on yourself and what it is that you need and want, in opposition to the moon in the house of the other. The moon in your 7th house might have you reflecting on what you need to do for another person, or might have you overly concerned with the needs of another person. That depends on your natal chart, of course, but that can often be what that signifies, that there's a lot of worry or concern for another. And this is an annual thing, so it's not like it's a sort of new issue for you, but nonetheless, you're noticing something about relationships or about an individual in your life that is going to teach you something about yourself. And the Mercury is trying to help you understand this lesson that Mercury is working on has been underway since July. So Mercury has already gone through your first house, it moved into your second house, and it's moving back into your first house of self. It will stay there till early September, really until mid-September. And so this is a long time for self-reflection for Leos, and later on for Virgo as well. You have Venus in your second house. So this is money and resources. So it looks like there's opportunities for you, but there's some issue here with that, where Saturn in the 8th house might have you feeling disappointed in other people coming through for you, or a feeling that there might be issues or problems with a loved one or with a business partner or with clients, for example. The 7th house can represent all of those. The 8th house is how you what you get from those relationships. And when Saturn is there, often it shows that there's some difficulty. There's some tension around, it could be your income or taxation, or around just what available resources you might have. This would not be a good time, for example, to take out a loan. I wouldn't take money or if you can avoid dealing with other people with regards to money, that would be best. That Saturn is also squaring Jupiter, which is conjoining Mars in a T-square to Venus at this time. The 11th and the second house are houses of money. Mercury is retrograde, so certainly don't borrow money from friends. Don't loan money to friends unless you're willing to give it away. So this is not a good time for those kinds of transactions. That's not a permanent thing. It's this particular configuration. But let's say it's for a while. Let's not don't if you can avoid all those kinds of transactions, it's just better for you right now. This moon is also squaring Uranus in your 10th. And so there's something about you or relationships or about what you would hope for in terms of your, whether it be business partners or your intimate partners and your social status. Something's changing there, or it can be around your ambition or career, that this something about that is changing dramatically, or something happens in that context and it requires a response, both from you as well as from your partner or the way that you're teaming up in relationship. So Venus is ruling that 10th house at the moment from your second house, and she's ruled by this retrograde Mercury. So whatever this is might also involve issues around income, and what to do about resources. This could have something to do with investments, placements, whether it be holdings of some kind, financial holdings. There's some maybe tension or confusion around that. There may be some kind of issue that is building up between you and a partner, again, around resources, or it can be about your career and how you need to stabilize your resources. So all leading to a place of deeper understanding, but at the moment, this week, a lot of tension and chaos. So try not to get into the emotional aspects of, or the worry aspects around it, especially if you follow, social media. Don't follow things minute by minute because it's just too much change. So let it all go. Right. So Leo, good luck with all that. I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising. And this is happening in the 8th house of other people's money. It's a house of intimacy as well. It's a house of unconscious fears, family patterns. It's a house of occult as well. And the second house is where we find Mercury and the Sun. So there's some issue here around money or around something that you might need to understand about intimate relationship or about your own processes, your own mental process, because we also have this the Mars and Jupiter conjunction from the 12th house. It's another sort of house of the mind, unconscious events and things that are going on in ways that might even be deeply spiritual, unsettling what seemed to have been settled, but unsettling this now, where Venus is in the house of the mind and thinking and exchanges and communication, and squared by that energy, in opposition to Saturn, which is squaring, so again, a T-square between Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. A lot of this is about thinking, forecasting, what am I going to do? And Uranus is changing that minute by minute in the 11th house of your visions, futures, your hopes and dreams for the future, and also your earnings. It can be the money that you gain from whatever you do, as well as how you show up collectively, how you show up in society or online and so on. And so that can be also part of this story. This is a really interesting tension. This is one of the signatures I share. I'm having my Saturn return. My Jupiter is actually in a separating square from Saturn, so I don't get my Jupiter return until it stations retrograde. So there we are. But nonetheless, this is a tension that can have us, let's say, Cancer Moon, Cancer Rising, Cancer Sun, in a place where there's a lot of change around beliefs or around even our relationship to faith. This is the kind of eternal dilemma there between the Jupiter and Saturn square, especially from the 12th house to the 9th house, where there's issues around what do I believe? What do I have faith in? And who do I believe? Saturn is in the house of gurus, in the house of leaders, and Saturn casts some doubt up there around who is good quality, who should be respected, who should be listened to, and where there's an overload. There can be an overload with the Jupiter-Mars conjunction. Mars squaring Saturn, often the way that that's described astrologically is like driving with the handbrake on, where you have this feeling of, come on, let's go. And then Saturn just says, wait, it's not going to work out. And so you have to figure out what's going to work out. And so the Mercury is retrograding. Mercury is ruling that Jupiter-Mars, retrograding in the second house. It's just being in this close cazimi, this tight conversation with the sun, recharging itself and now reflecting on a lot of the things that had been very somehow dynamic and forward moving in July. Now it's like, oh my God, all these things that need to be reflected on and changed. That's in a square to Uranus. So there's some events or some vision for your future that is also by definition changing on this part of the situation that may or may not be financial. It can also be around values, and it can also be around things of intimate nature, like your marital status or your marital partner, or it might be around money that comes from other people with the moon in the 8th. But that Venus is ruling Uranus from your 3rd house, which is ruled by this retrograding Mercury. So there seems also to be a slowdown or a confusion around money issues or around potentially issues around siblings. It can be something to do with siblings of, some issue that might come through. Could be a female sibling if we look at the Venus energy, but it could also be any sibling, an elder sibling, with the Uranus in the 11th house of elder siblings. Very difficult to pin this down without seeing a natal chart, but nonetheless, there is a lot of hectic energy that can also be very personal, can be very emotional, can be very psychological for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and rising natives. Especially with that Pluto going through the 8th house as well. So hang on, these things will smooth themselves out. And as we get into September, especially sort of towards the middle of September, it becomes a little bit easier. Now, Mars is going to move through the 1st house, September and October. It moves into the 2nd house through October, and it slows down in October. Then in November. It slows down in November. And by early December, it's retrograding and moving backwards into the 1st house. So then in the springtime, it's once again in Cancer until mid-April. So we're looking at a very extended period of time with Mars in the 1st house that's going to energize the career sector. So whatever is going on behind the scenes now, you need to get clear, make it real, keep it above board, make your negotiations, if you can, only in September. So you might negotiate, but let's say fix or concretize negotiations in September. For example, for me, I am actually translating and writing and adding to a book that was already written, but the author passed away in 2012. So I'm translating from the French into the English, and in the French law, copyright law, the author's copyright is passed on to descendants, and so it continues in either the spouse or the descendants of the author. So I'm waiting now for the widow of the author to negotiate with me how I can go forward and publish this book. So what I thought was going to be 1 volume might end up having to be 2, because I'm putting an enormous amount of work into beefing up, let's say, the original work. Aside from having just translated it, I'm adding a lot of content. And so if I'm having to pay royalties, I don't want to pay royalties on my own work. So anyway, that's my situation. Not to mention my hairy situation from train stoppage in Rotterdam and so on. But those were ninth house, 12th house issues that I quite expected. The adventure was built in to the travel last week. So perhaps that was your story as well. Anyway, so just think in terms of, okay, what do I need to stay clear about? What do I need to edit? What do I need to make changes based on? And know that all of this will lead to the greater good. All right. So good luck with all of that, Cancer. And I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is a big moment actually, because you've got a lovely moon in the ninth house, and it's in a trine to your first house where you already have Mars and Jupiter. So there's a lot going on in your life, a lot of sense of opportunities and what can be growing in your life. Your ruler, Mercury, is retrograding, and Mercury has been Kazimi on Sunday, the 18th, moving into the heart of the sun. And it will stay under the beams of the sun for this whole week and the next week as well. So it's a long period of time where Mercury is deeply influenced by the sun. Um, and it's in opposition, of course, to the moon in your ninth house of what do I really want to do and how is that going to manifest itself? Now, Pluto has been trying to get you to focus in on that as well. This can also have a lot to do with your belief system. What do you feel is your faith or your belief system? Your philosophy of life, if you like. This can also touch on politics as well, for that matter. And also in terms of issues around the father, the ninth house can represent the father, and especially because it's ruled by Saturn. And now that Saturn is in the 10th house of authority figures, there may be some tie-in here where we're looking at issues around authority figures. Fourth house is family, and Venus is in your house of family and home, property, what makes you feel secure. And so there's something here also that might be improving, a situation that might be improving, but it seems to be held back, or the demands are in the world outside. So there may be a desire to be more grounded in house and home, or in terms of what you feel you really need. But the call of the world at large, or your social responsibilities, or your career responsibilities, is pulling you out the door somehow. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that this is a moment of tension that requires a certain amount of understanding. There's a goal that you have, there's a drive and a desire with that, the Mars and Jupiter conjoining in your first house, and that is being somehow prevented or slowed down by Saturn. Saturn has questions. It has questions. So look back to May, June, June, yeah, to see what was the bigger question, what was the thing that you were dealing with, grappling with then. And Saturn is going over that territory again. It will continue to go over that territory for the rest of 2024. So this is a point where into 2025. So this is a point where you really want to put a lot of your attention on the goals or the responsibilities that you might have. You might have bitten off more than you can chew in some aspect of either your career or your social ambitions. You want to make this strong and lasting, make it durable, because when the North Node moves into the 10th house, you have another opportunity there for personal growth in terms of your career. So that's going to bring you more exposure. So get it right, take your time, don't rush. The Jupiter Mars in your first house will probably have you wanting to rush and make decisions that are maybe based on impulse, but let yourself be guided by what doesn't seem to be working. If you feel like you're pushing against a closed door, just back away for now and give it a little while. Your ruler works better for you when it's direct. Mercury's happy enough in a third house environment because that does feel comfortable, that all that communication and so on, but it might be about having to go back in time and apologize for something. It's going to be in a trine to Chiron in the 11th. There may be something that needs to be resolved or understood with regards to potentially an elder sibling or extended family, or something to do with money that you earn, or contracts. for example. I'd need to see your chart. Now, Uranus is in your 12th house, squaring this moon and sun and Mercury. So there's something here that's going on behind the scenes, or potentially internationally, or from a distance, or in your unconscious process that has you also feeling a little unsettled. And so remember that Uranus is going to move into your house of self in 2025. So you personally are going to change quite dramatically. So you want to try and dig deep if that's the case. Venus is in the fourth house of understanding your psychological nature and ruling that Uranus in the 12th. So there's something that you can understand that can also be connected to ancestors. It can also be connected to your lineage, your family of origin, your country of origin. And maybe all of that is pulling at you in different directions, and you're not quite sure what that means. Let's face it, none of us know what any of this means at this moment. So just lay low, try to digest it, try to take action where you know you can, and just expect that whatever actions that you take now might require some serious revision, or even a change. You'll maybe change your mind around things, and that would be fine too. Wait for the Mercury to go direct if you can at the end of August, 28th, 29th of August, and you'll see that things start to make sense in a way that they didn't before, especially if this is about your emotional nature or your home and family life, or even property deals. Definitely at the moment, just hold off on property deals and see if you can sort them out in September instead. September, or even like second half of September. Right, so good luck with that, Gemini. I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, this moon is in your 10th house of career and social standing and ambition. And so there's something here that's very powerful for you around what's going on in your outer life. There is some part of you, though, that needs to reconsider, reflect on what you really want, because Mercury is cazimi with the sun in the fourth house in opposition to the moon. Do watch the introduction as well, because you get some ideas around these tensions, which are also personal to you in the sense that a lot of this is happening in your angular houses, which is very personal. You've got Uranus in your first house as well, which has you changing quite dramatically. So this might just be revealing something where Pluto has just moved into your 10th last year, and now you've got this reflection on what does all of this mean. And especially since February of this year, and then we have this intensity around the square between the Sun and Uranus, and the Moon and Uranus. And so that square energy is also going to provoke some kind of change that might be coming from you. Might be you decide, you know what, I'm so done with this. I'm moving on, something different. Jupiter's in your second house of values, along with Mars. That's going to be a really big change around perhaps money or resources that are available to you, or your self-esteem as well. It is ruled by that retrograde Mercury. So again, whatever's not so sure around money, and that can also include, by the way, second house, whatever supports you, including your family. So this can also have to do with the quality of your family life, or what is necessary, let's say, around your family life. All of that is in flux right now. So there's not a lot that you can really be sure about. It's also at a time where we have Venus in a square to this Jupiter and Mars, and it's ruling it's ruling your ascendant, and Venus is also not so comfortable, let's say, in your fifth house of taking risks or reaching out. She's also being blocked in a way by Saturn. Venus rules your sixth house of work as well. So there might be something here about obligations or duties or something around work that you have to then sort out. Or there's something that you would have liked to do or that you would hope to do. There's something that seems to be blocking. From the 11th house of your future, you're changing your ideas around your future and what you'd like to see in your world. That Saturn in the 11th can also suggest that there may be some certain restrictions around the money that you earn from what you do, especially if you're an entrepreneur. And that would be also illustrative of the Venus in the fifth, which is the 12th house to the sixth. meaning that she is in the 12th house or pulling energy away from your house of everyday work. So there's something troubling you perhaps around your everyday. Could be also about health issues. Um, it's not a big deal. This is fifth house. It's trinal to you, so it's very supportive. I'm just focusing in terms of the aspects which are challenged at this point. So um, Jupiter and Mars are in this tight configuration of a square with Saturn. So whatever the feeling of delay based on the future or based on society or based on what you would have wanted to see going forward or how you might have wanted to earn going forward, because Saturn rules your 10th house. There's a desire, there's some kind of drive, there's some kind of focus of attention here. And yet there's this thing that says not quite yet. So, but it's temporary. These are not permanent things. Um, when Venus moves into your sixth, you're going to feel things a little bit more smooth. Mars is the ruler of your seventh house of relationships, as well as your 12th house of what's behind the eyes, which you're not really able to understand or access yet. And so some of your sense of values or worth might change a little bit depending on how those relationships are going, whether they be psychological in nature or whether they be relationships to actual people. Um, Yeah, I need to see your natal chart to be sure one way or another which direction to take this. But nonetheless, whatever this is, as I've said to the others, it's a temporary thing. And you want to get to the place where you feel like, okay, this week is almost a good week for me to just switch off and fantasize, dream, make it up, get involved in a visioning of something, but not necessarily get down to the nitty-gritty. It's not really going to stick. Whatever it is, it's not going to stick. Things are going to be changing quite dramatically over the next few weeks. We're also entering into eclipse season. So, all right, good luck with that, Taurus, and I'll see you in the next video. And Aries, last but not least, Aries, first and last. We have Aries, sun, moon, and rising. And this moon is happening in your 11th house of your future and the visions for the things that you'd like to accomplish, what you'd like to see happening. And it's in opposition to the sun and Mercury, which are in your fifth house. And that energy of the sun and Mercury is pulling in new ideas, new creative expressions. Very interesting for you because it's trinal to yourself. It's meaning a smoother, consistent sort of support at this moment. So whatever you're reconsidering, whatever you're recreating, whatever you're reflecting on, it's going to be something that is harmonious, that feels like, oh yeah, this is what it is. This is the thing I want to do. It's supported a lot by the Jupiter and Mars in your third, which has you really reflecting on how you might want to express yourself through writing or thinking. It can be teaching as well. Engagements of all kinds. This can be around siblings as well, relationships with extended family, neighbors, and the environment around you with people that you know, people that know your name. Or at least, you know, the guy who you get your coffee from every morning or whatever. These are the people there. There's a lot of busyness and activity there. Mars is your ruler. And so you're with Mars in the third, there's a lot going on. Now, Mars and Jupiter together in the third, already with Mars in the third, you can end up in saying things that you might regret. So be careful. It can be a tendency towards sarcasm, scathing, sort of biting. One-liners that seemed to be funny at the time, but may not be so funny. Jupiter might smooth that out for you, but don't count on it. So think carefully before you speak, Aries, and that's a really helpful thing right now because there is some tension here at work that might be part of the story, and also in your house of your what you might call yourself undoing, and that tension, that square there from Saturn might show you that there's certain ways that you're not taking responsibility or that you are not taking seriously your own unconscious processes or issues that need to be dealt with in terms of habits, whether they be addictions or unhealthy habits of some other kind. That's really going to show you how that's affecting your health, but also affecting your relationships of all kinds in terms of friendships or the family relations. Now, this is a brilliant opportunity when Saturn is there, if there is an addiction issue. It's a brilliant opportunity for you to resolve that. You feel third house Mars and Jupiter is can do. I have the drive, I have the ambition, I have the determination. The moon is showing you, where do I want to go in my life? So if there is something holding you back, whether it be through serious addiction or something that is really detrimental to your health, or whether it be just through things that you realize that require your attention because they're like leakages in your otherwise helpful way of living. It's a good time. This opportunity with your ruler there in the third house has you really driven, setting new goals with a vision that Jupiter helps with. And Saturn says, look, whatever this thing was that you were realizing needs changing, we need to get deeper into it. We need to get more understanding of it. And this could also have to do with foreign lands or going abroad or deciding to work abroad. Jupiter from your third house of travel rules your 12th house and your ninth house. And so this could be working abroad or wanting to travel with a sense of purpose, either travel for healing or retreating. Saturn in the 12th would be like a retreating kind of energy, very helpful, whether it be for just mental sort of peace of mind or whether it be for actual healing. Either way, it's excellent. If you also research, if you're doing work on anything, researching, it's a very perfect time right now for researching, studying, writing behind the scenes. We've got Mars, which rules your 8th house of the behind the scenes things, and Jupiter, which rules your 12th house of sort of retreating and pulling back from society, in the third house of expression and writing and communication, getting stuff done, and also Venus in your everyday house, trying to work hard with that opposition to Saturn. She feels like this something I got to do, some mission I've got to do, and the creativity is flowing because of this Mercury Sun in the 5th house. And all through the rest of the month of basically into kind of mid-September, you've got this really lovely supportive energy of creative expression. So use that if that's something that you're working towards. It can really help you maybe also understand yourself through the creative process. Right, Aries, I think that finishes us off for the Aquarius full moon. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in world events or politics, you can follow me to hear the next video that I'll upload, which is about the kind of current global situation and American political situation. Bit volatile, certainly in the comment section, and you're welcome to join me there. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.